precise instant when I knew my marriage had ended is etched in my memory. It didn't come during a heated dispute or after finding some hidden note or text messages. Instead, this clarity struck me at 2:47 in the morning in a sterile hospital room. As I observed my spouse, Sarah, casually flipping through TikTok videos while I struggled desperately to draw breath into my failing lungs. What's even more striking is how my senses felt sharper than ever, making me painfully aware of everything around me with an unsettling clarity. But let me back up a bit. I'm Jacob, 32 years old, a mechanical engineer by day, and apparently, until that fateful hospital stay, a naive, trusting husband by night. I'd been married to Sarah for 6 years. Early on, I thought she was headstrong, ambitious, the kind of person who refused to let anyone or anything stand in her way. Over time, I discovered that included me. She wanted the big career, the fast track, the constant stream of online validation, and if I so much as sneezed in her direction, I was getting in the way. 3 weeks before the hospital incident, I noticed a persistent ache and fatigue that just wouldn't quit. Sarah's response was exactly the same every single time I tried to bring up my symptoms. "You're being dramatic," she'd say, not even glancing up from her phone. I started to get fevers, the kind that make your bones feel like shattered glass, the kind that drench your sheets in sweat by midnight. Sarah's response? "Take some Tylenol and stop waking me up." That was always it with her. I learned to keep quiet. The night everything changed, I woke up unable to move my right side properly. The room spun. My heart pounded so violently it felt like it would tear out of my chest. I moaned for Sarah, but she mumbled something about having to get up early. "I'm not your babysitter. Handle it yourself," she snapped, rolling over to face the wall. Minutes, maybe hours, blurred into panic as I tried to make my phone cooperate with uncooperative fingers. Finally, I managed to call my older sister, Alexandra, who lived 45 minutes away. She made it in 20. By the time she arrived, my fever had risen so high that I could barely see straight, and my limbs felt encased in cement. Sarah, for her part, put up a half-hearted protest when Alexandra insisted I needed the ER. "You're enabling his attention-seeking behavior," she scoffed to my sister, then waved us out the door as if she were dismissing staff. At the ER, I heard doctors and nurses throw around words like septic shock and organ failure. My temperature read 104.2 degrees Fahrenheit. My blood pressure was plummeting. They pumped me full of antibiotics, rushed me through scans, and set me up in ICU. The next few days were a blur of medication, disorientation, and intangible fear. Alexandra was there, day in and day out. Sarah visited twice. The first time she complained about how hard it was to find parking. The second time she brought me a cold latte and started scrolling through Instagram after handing it to me. I thought that was the worst of it. But I was wrong. Because the worst moment wasn't her complaining about parking or her ignorance of my medical condition. The worst moment was overhearing, clearly, horrifyingly, how her betrayal ran deeper than simple negligence. It happened on my 5th night in the hospital. I was drifting in and out of consciousness, floating in that no man's land between feverish oblivion and partial awareness. I'd been stable for about a day, but I was still too weak to speak above a whisper or move more than a few inches. That's when I heard footsteps entering my room and a familiar voice, though it took me a second to register who it belonged to. My cousin, Daniel. Daniel and I had been close as kids. He was always the bolder one, quick to charm everyone around him. As we grew older, we drifted in different directions. I dedicated myself to schooling, engineering, a steady career. Daniel hopped around from job to job, all the while perfecting his easy grin and good looks. "He's looking rough," Daniel muttered. I think he was standing near my bed, possibly checking the IV lines or the monitors. Sarah's phone chimed in the background. "Yeah, but he's stable now," Sarah replied, sounding utterly bored while looking at her nearly comatose husband in the ICU. My eyelids felt like bricks, but I forced them open a hair, enough to see shapes through the haze of the overhead lights. I saw Sarah in her tight-fitting blouse and pencil skirt, leaning against the edge of my bed. Her posture told me everything I needed to know, arms folded, foot tapping. Daniel stood close to her, too close. "Maybe we should talk outside," Daniel whispered, glancing at me. "He's out of it," Sarah said, flicking her wrist dismissively. "He can't even move." She placed her phone on the foot of the bed. "You came all this way, and it's late. I want to see you." The realization slammed into my gut. Sarah wanted him there. She had texted or called him to come. To the hospital, my hospital room. Was he there to check on me or to see her? Sarah's phone lit up again and she sighed. Put it away, Daniel said softly, his voice dropping to a murmur I recognized from boyhood escapades. He always lowered his voice when he was about to do something he knew was wrong. We don't need any interruptions. He put his hands on her hips and guided her away from the foot of the bed. My entire body screamed for me to do something, anything. My mind raced, but my muscles refused to comply. The infection had left me so weak that I couldn't even raise an arm to push them away. Right here, Sarah whispered, a hint of shock but also excitement in her tone. He can't move, Daniel repeated. He won't see anything. But what if he's half dead, Sarah? Her laugh was like a dagger to my lungs. My heart thundered in my chest, monitors beeping in agitation. I prayed a nurse would come in, prayed someone would interrupt, but nobody did. The door was closed. The hustle and bustle of the ICU was out in the hallway, and no one thought to check on me at that exact moment. I heard them kiss, those wet, smacking sounds that made me want to retch. I tried to open my mouth, tried to call for help, tried to say anything, but my throat felt like it was lined with gravel. My vocal cords refused to produce more than a harsh rasp that neither of them noticed. They moved behind the privacy curtain that hung partially around my bed. There were groans, muffled words. I couldn't see them completely, but in the slices of movement I caught in my peripheral vision, I knew exactly what was happening. She was with him right there. My wife, my cousin, in my hospital room. All I could do was listen, horror flooding every cell. The numb beep, beep, beep of the monitor echoed around us, overshadowed by their panting. Sarah stifled a moan. I saw Daniel's shoes shuffle closer to the bed, caught the silhouette of them pressed together. My entire body shook, half from fever and half from rage. They acted as if I didn't exist, as if I were a corpse that happened to be lying there, unresponsive. It didn't last long, just a sickening couple of minutes, but it was the longest few minutes of my life. When they finished, Sarah exhaled sharply. "We should probably get out of here," she said, almost giggling. "Someone might come in." Daniel laughed too, that same cocky laugh he'd had since we were kids, getting away with stealing candies. He even straightened his shirt in the reflective surface of a nearby cabinet, then turned back to me. I squeezed my eyes shut, not wanting him to see any sign I might be awake. "He's just lying there," Daniel said, kind of creepy. "Don't worry," Sarah whispered. "He's not going anywhere." They left, arms looped around each other, and I was alone once more with the beeping machines and the suffocating stench of betrayal. I can't fully explain the swirl of emotions. Anger, heartbreak, nausea, and an even fiercer determination to not die. Something about that moment, my primal fury, galvanized me more effectively than any antibiotic drip ever could. I refused to fade away. I would live. I would heal. And when I did, I swore to myself I would settle the score. Brutally. I was released from the hospital a week later. Sarah came to pick me up, acting all exasperated as if doing me the greatest favor in the world. "You should be grateful," she told me in the car, rolling her eyes. "I had to cancel lunch plans just to get you." I didn't say a word. I forced myself to remain limp, feeble, and docile, giving her no hint that I knew about her nightly escapade with Daniel. My body still felt hollowed out, every muscle shaky from extended illness. But my mind was a different story, crystal clear. When we got home, she tossed me onto the couch like a piece of luggage and strolled off to the bedroom. "I'm not your babysitter," she called out, not even turning around. "Handle it yourself if you need something." That single line was enough to make me grip the couch cushions until my fingernails nearly tore through the upholstery. If I reacted now, I'd never be able to pull off what I had in mind. I needed time to build my strength, then I would unleash everything. I wasn't always consumed by revenge. I was the quiet one, the mediator in my family, believing in second chances. That's why I tolerated Sarah's constant belittling, convincing myself she'd change. With our father gone, my mom struggled, and my older sister Alexandra and I leaned on each other. We also tried to help our cousin Daniel, whose home life was chaotic, but over time his charm turned into manipulation. Sarah had her own ruthless ambition. Looking back, they were perfect for each other. I had introduced them, family after all. At a barbecue 2 summers ago, I thought I was bringing loved ones together, never seeing the flirtation that led to betrayal. The signs were there. Sarah's laughter at Daniel's jokes, his eagerness to help her whenever I wasn't looking. I was blind. Her parents, the Albrights, never liked me. They wanted her with someone impressive, not a mechanical engineer They pretended civility in public, but always made snide remarks about my lack of upward mobility. That attitude seeped into Sarah, who always made sure I knew I was the boring one. When word got out that I'd been hospitalized, they sent a curt "get well soon" text. Then, when I returned home, Sarah's mother, Sandra, called me exactly once. "We hope you're managing," she said, not even letting me respond before adding, "Sarah's so busy at work and so stressed looking after you. Try not to be a burden." They'd come to visit if they could find the time. They never did. In the days following my discharge, I observed them. Sarah would FaceTime her mom, chat animatedly about her job, never once mentioning my condition unless it was a complaint about me moping around. Her father, Leonard, was no different. Stoic, aloof, convinced his daughter could do no wrong. Anytime he did address me, it was with this subtle condescension he'd perfected over the years. "Keep your chin up, son. No reason to drag Sarah down while you recover." I hardly spoke. I needed them to believe I was too weak to fight back. Let them think I was retreating inward, depressed, powerless. Let them remain blind to the storm I was preparing. I started physical therapy days after leaving the hospital. Nerve damage in my right leg and arm left me unsteady, but I masked my rage behind polite smiles. Malik, my therapist, guided me patiently as I fought to regain strength. Every night, while Sarah scrolled through her phone or went out, I dug through our finances. Suspicious charges, spa visits on work trips, hotel bar receipts hinted at her carelessness. She never expected me to look. I also studied Daniel. His flashy Mustang came with sky-high interest rates, his job history was unstable, and his social media was a highlight reel of expensive watches and overpriced dinners. He was all show, no substance. Alexandra noticed the change in me. "You seem different," she said, bringing groceries. "Is this just recovery?" I forced a weak grin. "Just tired. Need to focus on getting better." She didn't buy it, but let it go. Her eyes scanned the room. Sarah's things strewn everywhere. My belongings stacked neatly, like I was a guest in my own home. "If you need anything, I'm here," she said, hugging me. I knew I'd need her after my plan unfolded, because deep down, I feared I might lose myself in the process. About a month passed since my release from the hospital. I was moving around well enough to drive again, though I still had to be careful. I timed a conversation carefully. It was a Saturday morning, bright and breezy, when Sarah lounged in the living room, swiping through social media. "I think we need to talk about where we're headed," I began, voice calm. She didn't even pause her scrolling. "What? Oh, God, are you still upset about the hospital?" She sighed dramatically. "I told you, I was stressed. It was a big project at work, and—" "Sarah," I said, my voice sharper than she'd ever heard. She froze. I continued, more quietly. "I nearly died." "But you didn't," she snapped back, tossing her phone aside with a roll of her eyes. "You didn't die, so can we move on?" I studied her face, the complete absence of remorse. All I could think about was that night in the hospital, the sounds of her with Daniel. I felt my jaw clench. "If that's how you feel, there's not much to discuss. I'm leaving." I rose on unsteady legs. She looked at me, genuine shock flickering across her features. "What do you mean, leaving? Like, you want a divorce? Seriously? Because I was stressed during your hospital stay?" She stood up, crossing her arms, her voice tinted with the arrogance she'd inherited from her parents. "You don't have the guts, Jacob. You couldn't even take care of yourself without my help. Where are you gonna go?" I nearly laughed in her face, but I kept a lid on my anger. "Not yet," I told myself. "It doesn't matter," I replied evenly. "I'm just done." "Don't be stupid. You have no plan, no place. You think you can pay for another apartment plus all your medical bills? You'll crawl back here in a week." I didn't answer. I grabbed my car keys, my old beater of a sedan, walked out the door, leaving her standing there. As soon as I turned the corner, out of her line of sight, I ducked behind the garage and waited. Predictably, she stomped to the window to watch me drive away. Not seeing my car on the street, she frowned, likely confused. I kept hidden, controlling my breathing, forcing calm. Eventually, she shrugged and went back inside. My phone vibrated with a text from Daniel. "Hey man, want to catch up soon?" "Been a while." I stared at his number, the audacity of that man. They were so sure I was a doormat, a pathetic weakling who'd just take it all. They had no idea what was coming. For weeks, I disappeared from Sarah's world. Officially, I was staying with a friend to clear my head. In reality, I stayed with Alexandra, who supported me without asking questions. I needed that. Meanwhile, I set my plan in motion. Finances. I siphoned money from our joint account, my earnings, since Sarah spent hers on luxuries. I left just enough to avoid suspicion. Allies. I reached out to Roman, an old college friend with a knack for hacking. He uncovered Daniel's financial mess, massive debts, shady dealings, and a Mustang he could barely afford. The bait. I texted Daniel pretending to want a road trip. Let's hit the road, see some old friends, I need fresh air. He agreed, clueless, probably thinking he still had control over me or just eager to show off. Sarah's arrogance. I watched her social media. She posted cryptic quotes about needing space. Her parents showered her with support, unaware I had walked out. By the time I was strong enough to drive, even fight if needed, my plan was complete. My anger had swallowed the last shred of empathy I once had. The day I set everything in motion started innocently enough. A warm, sunny morning. I texted Daniel, "Let's do that road trip today. Perfect weather." Daniel answered, "I'm in. Meet you at my place in an hour." I pulled up to his apartment complex in a borrowed car. A friend of Roman's had lent me a battered SUV that wouldn't be traced back to me. Daniel stood outside, leaning against his beloved metallic blue Mustang, flipping through his phone. "Long time no see," he greeted me with a grin. But I could tell he was sizing me up. He probably noticed the weight I'd lost, the circles under my eyes. "You look better." "Thanks," I said shortly. "We good, cousin?" he asked, stepping forward like he wanted to give me some sort of man hug. I forced a smile. "Sure, why wouldn't we be?" He hesitated, and I saw a flicker of caution in his eyes. But his arrogance overrode any deeper suspicion. We got into his Mustang, he insisted on driving, and peeled out of the parking lot. Loud engine, custom wheels, everything a showboat like Daniel would splurge on instead of paying rent on time. We drove out of town, took winding roads toward the countryside. I made small talk, asked him about his job. He boasted about some new gig at a buddy's startup. I listened, nodding, occasionally throwing in a laugh. My real focus was on the digital tracker Roman had hidden under the passenger seat. Roman was following our route from a distance in the borrowed SUV with a couple of my other friends. They knew roughly what I intended, enough to help, not enough to get themselves implicated if it went south. After an hour of driving, we reached a remote stretch of road flanked by woods, hardly any traffic. Perfect. "Pull over," I said suddenly. "Need to take a leak." "Seriously?" Daniel frowned, looking around. "Here?" "I can't wait," I lied, pointing to the next dirt path branching off. "Just pull in there." He obliged, complaining about the paint job on his precious car. The road was dusty and riddled with gravel. Eventually, we reached a clearing in the woods. I got out, pretended to wander off behind some trees. That's when Roman's SUV rumbled into the clearing, headlights off. Daniel glanced back at me, alarm flickering across his face. "Jacob, what's going on?" I stepped out from behind a tree. My face hardened into an expression he'd never seen before. Two of my friends, men in good shape who owed me favors, stepped out of the SUV. Daniel reached for the door of the Mustang, panic rising. Jacob?" His voice trembled. "Shut up!" I growled. He froze. One of my friends, a tall guy named Santiago, moved behind Daniel's car and blocked him from getting back into the driver's seat. Roman circled around to the front. "You're not going anywhere, Daniel," I said in a low voice. Daniel's eyes darted from me to the men flanking him. He tried to laugh it off. "Okay, you're messing with me, right? I don't get the joke." "Did you find it funny?" I snarled, stepping closer. "When you and Sarah decided to have your little fling in my hospital room while I was half dead?" His jaw dropped. For the first time, I saw genuine fear. "Good. Look, man, I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "You sure about that?" "Because I heard you." "I heard everything." I shot forward, seizing him by the collar. Anger flooded my veins with a surge of adrenaline. Despite the residual weakness from my illness, I channeled months of rage into that grip. He sputtered, trying to pry my fingers away. "Let me go," he gasped. "Jacob, we're cousins." I slammed him against the Mustang. "Cousins," I repeated bitterly. "I used to think that meant something." He struggled, eyes wide, scanning the clearing for help. There was none. Only me, my two friends, Roman still standing watch, and the only exit was blocked by the SUV. "I'm sorry, okay?" Daniel whimpered, his tone turning desperate. "It was just a moment. We messed up. It was a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill on time," I hissed. "That was a choice, Daniel. You and her together, right in front of me while I lay in that bed, tubes everywhere, practically in a coma." He tried to shove me off. I responded with a swift punch to his stomach. He doubled over, coughing. This was only the beginning. I was seething, barely able to see straight. My friends kept their distance, letting me vent. I lifted Daniel by the back of his shirt and flung him onto the gravel. He landed with a thud, dust kicking up around him. He scrambled backward, hands cut by the rocks. "Jacob, please, we can talk," he pleaded. "Talk?" I took a step toward him, each footstep measured. "Like how you talked with Sarah while I was unconscious?" A memory of them kissing, moaning. My rage ignited further. I closed the distance and drove my foot into his side. He cried out, rolling over in pain. "We can talk after you feel a fraction of what I felt," I said, my voice shaking with unbridled fury. Daniel's prized Mustang sat purring, oblivious to the drama. I exchanged a glance with Roman. He handed me a crowbar from the back of the SUV. Daniel watched, eyes bulging with terror. "No, no, no, man, come on!" he choked out, struggling to stand. I ran my hand along the Mustang's glossy finish. This was his baby. Everything he valued, status, image, bragging rights, was manifested in this car. "You care about this more than anything, right?" I said softly. "It's just a car!" Daniel yelled. I can fix it if you... Please!" I swung the crowbar in a vicious arc, shattering the driver's side window. Glass shards exploded inward, scattering across the seat. Daniel screamed, whether in pain or heartbreak, I wasn't sure. I didn't stop. I circled the car, leaving a twisted path of destruction. The hood, the windshield, the side mirrors. Each crash of metal on metal echoed across the clearing. The crowbar connected again and again until the once glimmering Mustang was reduced to a battered husk. Daniel was on his knees, tears streaming down his face. His side was bruised from my kicks. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. He begged over and over. "Please, Jacob, just stop. I'll do anything." I dropped the crowbar, my chest heaving. A swirl of satisfaction and disgust warred inside me. Part of me wanted to go further, to ensure he never forgot the day he crossed me. But I also felt a sick sense of emptiness creeping in. Revenge wasn't as sweet as I'd imagined. It tasted more like burning acid at the back of my throat. "I'm not done," I ground out. He flinched, pressing himself against the wreck of his car. "You've still got your legs, so get up. Fight me." "Jacob, I can't. Fight me!" I roared, yanking him to his feet by his collar. He threw a weak punch. I dodged, then drove my fist into his jaw. He collapsed again, sobbing. My friends hovered on the edges of the clearing, making sure no one wandered in. The glimmer of pity in Santiago's eyes told me I'd gone far enough. But I had more to do. One final note. I reached into the Mustang's ruined interior, rummaging past shattered glass until I found the ignition. I yanked his key from where he kept it stashed. Then I tossed it at him. "The day you ever come near me again," I spat. "Remember what happened here? Remember that I let you live." He blinked, fear etched into every contour of his face. He didn't respond, just whimpered. I turned away, heading for the SUV. Roman and Santiago followed. The roar of the engine was the only sound as we left Daniel kneeling in the dirt, his precious Mustang destroyed, his illusions of superiority burned to ash. After finishing with Daniel, I felt an almost unquenchable thirst for closure with Sarah. The next day, I returned to the house. I still had my keys, though I suspected she might have changed the locks. But she hadn't. Arrogance, as always. I stepped into the living room. Sarah sat on the couch, phone in hand. She glanced up, eyebrows shooting skyward. "You're back?" she said, her voice dripping with annoyance. "What now?" I stood there, my clothes still grimy from the day before, a bruise forming on my knuckles. A swirl of contempt churned in my gut. She was partly responsible for every bit of rage I'd unleashed on Daniel. She destroyed my trust, my sanity, my sense of safety. "I know everything," I said quietly. "About you, about Daniel. You made a mockery of our marriage." She shrugged, eyes flitting back to her phone. "So what? Wasn't working out anyway." I stared at her, trying to fathom how someone could be so indifferent. Then I advanced, stepping into her line of sight, forcing her to look at me. "You know what for better or worse means, Sarah. It means not leaving your husband to die alone in a hospital. It means not..." She barked out a laugh, cutting me off. "Don't lecture me on marriage vows. Look at you, so sanctimonious. You think I cheated because you were oh so lovable? You're dull, Jacob, a dead end. That's why I checked out." My fists tightened at my sides. "You have no remorse, no guilt for anything?" She rolled her eyes. "You're acting so dramatic as usual. A marriage takes two people and you bored me to death. If you want out, fine. Go. You're worthless to me anyway." "That's it?" I demanded. No apology? No explanation? Explanation? She snorted. Sure, I was done with you a long time ago. Stayed for convenience. Daniel was fun, but you almost died, and that threw a wrench in my life. Now, if you're not going to pay the bills or make yourself useful, I don't need you. I laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. She stared, confused, as I pulled out the set of documents from my jacket pocket. Divorce papers. Her lips parted in surprise. You're actually serious? Sign them, I said, tossing them onto the coffee table. Or I'll drag this out in court and it will get messy. Trust me, I've got enough evidence to ruin you. She narrowed her eyes, leaning forward. Evidence? Of what? Medical records, testimonies, phone logs, the works. Of how you neglected me in a near-fatal situation, publicly lying about supporting me, funneling joint funds for your own entertainment. Oh, and let's not forget that little incident with Daniel in my hospital room. There are cameras in hallways, you know, enough to show you two creeping in after visiting hours. For the first time, I saw genuine panic in her expression. She picked up the divorce papers with shaky hands, scanning them. I had no intention of letting this be a drawn-out legal fight. I wanted a clean break. In the settlement, I asked for nothing but my own personal items. She could keep the house. I didn't want it. The memory of me lying half dead on that couch while she scrolled her phone was enough to taint every inch of that place. This is ridiculous, she muttered. You're letting me keep everything? Why? What's the catch? The catch is that you never contact me again, I said flatly. No texts, no calls, no social media meltdown claiming you're the victim. No lying to our friends about me. You do that, I make all of this public. She glared at me, then let out a resigned scoff. Fine, hand me a pen. I did. She signed each page with quick, jaded strokes. When she was done, I scooped the papers back into my jacket. A sense of finality settled over me, like the moment after a thunderstorm when the sky is still heavy but the lightning has passed. Get out, she spat. This was never your house to begin with. I nodded, turning on my heel. One more thing, I said, pausing at the door. If you ever see Daniel again, actually, you know what? Go ahead. He's not going to be much fun anymore. Confusion flashed across her face. What did you do? Let's just say, I shrugged, he won't be driving that Mustang anytime soon. I left without another word, shutting the door behind me on a marriage that had died long before my hospital stay. I later heard Sarah told her parents I had manipulated her into signing. They called, furious that I left her with the mortgage. I blocked them. Alexandra took a few calls, setting them straight. The Albrights went silent. Daniel vanished. Maybe he moved. Maybe he was licking his wounds. I still see him on his knees beside his wrecked car. Did I go too far? Maybe. But part of me enjoys it. In the weeks after, I stayed with Alexandra, finalizing paperwork and saving for a fresh start. My mother reached out, apologetic for not being there. I told her some things have to be faced alone. I started therapy, unpacking the humiliation, betrayal, and dark satisfaction of revenge. My therapist warned, revenge can feel justified, but it can also leave us hollow. I'm still figuring out who I am now. I'm no hero, just a man who became something he never thought possible. But I survived, and Sarah will never again dismiss my pain. Maybe that's enough to let me sleep. A month after filing for divorce, I found a message from an unknown account. I can't believe you humiliated me. You were always weak. Now you think you're strong? I will never forgive you. Sarah. I didn't respond. I closed the laptop, went for a walk. The sky was clear, my leg felt decent, and the sun felt warm on my face. I'm still here. I thought about Daniel's weeping figure, the smashed Mustang, the satisfying crunch of metal beneath the crowbar. Then I thought about the pity in Santiago's eyes, and the shaky breath I took after it was all done. Yes, I told myself, I'm still here. But I'm not the same. I might be a villain in someone else's story now. Yet maybe that's what it took to finally claim my own life back. There's no epilogue to this tale, just the knowledge that I left, I ended it, and I walked away with my dignity and self-respect.